We're moving on to our next unit of study, which is causes, practice, and effects of 20th century wars. And so today I want to highlight some of the elements of this new unit of study. So when we talk about causes, practice, and effects of 20th century war, there are some key themes to look at. One is the origin and the causes of war. Why did they start? So we need to get a little historical context here. So we have to look at the long and the short term and immediate causes. The 20th century wars, the nature is how it's really being practiced. And so we need to take a look at that. It could vary from conflict to conflict, but what goes into the nature of these 20th century wars is the technology, the tactics, where the conflict is happening. We talk about geography when we think about theaters. Who is involved? Is it internally or externally? And targets. What and who are becoming targets in these conflicts? And then finally, the effects and the results of the wars. Both the various participant sides, enough is enough. Sue for peace, you have the peacemaking process, but then we also have to look at the economic and the political and social effects of these conflicts. Now, throughout this unit of study, there are going to be a number of categories of conflicts that we will look at, and one of them is cross-regional wars, or sometimes called interstate wars. And this is a conflict that involves two or more states in which they utilize their national forces to fight. So geography is going to be a factor. Theater of action, where it is going to occur. It might be in multiple places. It could be in one region. It depends on, again, who is fighting and where they want this fight to occur. So examples of that, again, would be like First and Second World Wars and the Gulf Wars. In most cases, civil war is not going to be an example of interstate war, because civil wars tend to be within one particular country. Interstate war needs to occur in multiple places. Total war is sometimes thrown out there as well, and this is where a country uses all its human and economic and military resources to fight the war. And so a large fighting force, and that is going to be a part of many of the 20th century conflicts, large fighting force. And that might be because the use of conscription, which is just a fancy word for draft. And we'll see the use of conscription in many countries, in which that's a way in which they can create their large fighting force. The use of civilians here, we're talking about the civilians on the home front, used in a number of ways, maybe in defense-related industries, or be part of various types of drives, like scrap drives. All sectors of society are going to be utilized here, and all groups are going to be utilized here during some of these conflicts. All weapons and technology, 20th century is definitely a killing century, and what contributes to it is the innovation of technology and the weapons as these wars progress throughout the 20th century. Government coordination is a part of total wars as well. The government is going to make sure that all necessary resources and manpower is going to be used in this conflict, and so they're going to coordinate that, whether it's through agencies or executive orders, but the government is going to be greatly involved here. And another example of a total war, an element of total war, is targeting civilians. They become the target, maybe because it's part of a policy. War can be very tempting for nations to bring in other agendas here. And of course, with total war geography is a part of it. So we're looking really here at the First World War and the Second World War when we are focusing on total war. Another type of war that we'll look at is limited war, and it is the idea of limiting or constraining the way in which war is conducted, and that could be geography, keep it small and localized, types of targets, mainly military targets, hard word for me to say, but limit the types of targets, use of technology and weapons. And as weapons and the technology become more sophisticated, limited wars become more of the norm. Degree of mobilization, it's not going to be like a total war where all is thrown in. Maybe partial mobilization of military force, and the results and the impact here may not be as far reaching as a total war could be. So after 1945, this type of war became a necessity to avoid conflicts like nuclear conflicts. And so we do see more limited wars. For example, the Korean War stayed on the Korean Peninsula, 1950 to 1953, or the Gulf War, which stayed in the Middle East around Iraq and Kuwait. And so limited wars again seem to become the norm after World War II. We did see throughout the 20th century emergence of civil wars, and these are conflicts that occur within a state. The warring sides clash over perhaps ethnic issues, possibly religious issues, political issues, and ideological issues as well. Foreign involvement may occur, economic and military aid. It's possible that foreign powers will send some fighting force, maybe boots on the ground, or maybe air, sea technology. But there seems to be in the 20th century a greater degree of foreign involvement. So examples of this would be like the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, and the Chinese Civil War, 1928 to 1937, and 1946 to 1949. So there are two parts to that Civil War. World War II, or the Sino-Japanese War, interrupted their conflict, and then Rwanda, one that we had studied in Unit 1, could fit into this category as a civil war. Then you have guerrilla warfare. So within some of these conflicts, guerrilla warfare may come out. Guerrilla warfare literally means little war. It's an unconventional war with unconventional tactics being used here: assassination of opponents, attacks on specific groups, sabotage of infrastructure, equipment, or production, destruction of enemies, supplies, and housing. So basically, you're trying to lay waste to your opponent, hurting them in multiple ways to prevent them from really fighting a war. And it becomes very effective in the 20th century. Example would be like the Algerian War, 1954 to 1962, or the Cuban Civil War, 1953 to 1959. And again, we can find elements of guerrilla warfare in just about most of the wars of the 20th century. Other types of warfare that we'll come across is trench warfare, which is associated with the First World War. It includes technology and strategies. You have conventional warfare, battling armies in open ground, mobile warfare, and we can find a number of conflicts like that. Air warfare becomes big in the 20th century. Airborne machines, we're talking about the planes, involved in naval and conventional warfare, and really the type of targeting. So the air warfare is going to become a little bit more effective as we move through the 20th century. And then naval warfare as well. Various types of warships use different base on wars. Navy is going to play a huge part in the Second World War. And so as we, again, look at these conflicts, we bring in the different elements, the different types of wars as well. So another part of this unit of study is looking at the effects, the cause and effects category. Most wars will be caused by and results in a combination of factors. We're talking about economic. What is the situation? Is it a crisis state? And then the results, it could have a devastating effect on the economy. When we talk about territorial, this could be something that prompts a war in which in a previous war they lost territory and now they want it back, or war presents an opportunity to expand one's regional influence and political boundaries. And then the social structure. We're talking about structure of society, race and gender issues. There could be a systemic problem in those countries that could contribute to a conflict, usually in the case of like civil wars. And then at the end, society is restructured to look like what the victors or the side that had won. And so there is some restructuring of society going on. And then you have the political, factional. And again, something that could probably be more associated with civil wars, but it could also be in some other conflicts where nations are just struggling to find solutions peacefully. Diplomacy is breaking down. And that could contribute to it. But we also look in civil wars where you just have two opposing sides and they just cannot find a middle ground. They become very polarized. And so another form of diplomacy is war, and they break down in that. And then the end result is one side emerges and that political ideology could take over. And then the ideology, the structure of society and government altogether here. And again, something that could be more associated with civil wars, but also we also saw, like in the Second World War, ideology will be center stage in that action as well, and the ideological differences will play out, and as well as in multiple regions because of the ideological differences, and that would be like referencing the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. And so throughout the 20th century, you'll find conflicts are occurring around the world globally, but we should also know that some of these conflicts are emerging after World War II in regions like Latin America, Africa, and in Asia. Not to say that they don't go on in Europe, because we do know that, but a good chunk or majority of the fightings will occur outside of Europe in the 20th century, after World War II. So one thing also associated with Unit 2 here is another aspect of IB history that we need to focus on, and that is the essays. All right, and so Unit 2 and Unit 3 will all be topics that will appear on the Paper 2 exam. And so what that means is a traditional historical essay, an intro, body, and conclusion. Essay will have you analyze, compare, and contrast, discuss, evaluate, or examine. We're looking at multiple perspectives here. Content is important, so you need to know some little details to help enhance your general thoughts. And then critical analysis is very critical in the success of this essay, showing what you know and the ultimate meaning behind what you have said. And so expect at least one essay during Unit 2 will not occur at the end of trimester 1.1 or 1.2, but the essay will appear in trimester 2.1 and 2.2. So with that, we are set to start Unit 2 here, and you have an assignment that will focus on why should we study war. With that, good luck, enjoy, take care, have a great day.